Cool. Maximilian.
Good Shabbos, good Yontif, good Shabbos, good Yontif.
Sameach and a Shabbat Shalom to you. So, without further ado, another episode of Traumatically, Triumphant with my legitimate longtime childhood friend from Seward Park, the 98118, although you were Southside.
Still 98118.
Yeah. No, I know, but we rolled in different.
We were like the cool side of 98118.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's what they thought on the South.
Okay.
But welcome, Max Alcavez, Maximilian Asher Alcavez.
That's right.
Would be the proper thing. Also, our gracious host and amazing proprietor of this Pink Cloud Studios. As I always say, whether you're a pop star or a podcast host and you want to just rise to the top, Pink Cloud is the place to be. Look them up and book them.
Yep.
And
Appreciate it.
well, yeah, welcome.
Thank you.
So,
are you having me?
Yeah.
You're kinda having me.
Thanks. We're having each other.
We're having each other.
That's very poly in 2020.
I'm fine with it.
It's funny. Before I came to this episode, I knew if we haven't had an explicit episode yet, today very well might be the day. No, we're good.
Yeah, it depends what we talk about.
Well, it's rated M anyway for Max.
Oh, got it.
All right. Well,
how many Jews from Stewart Park are going to see this episode? Probably
a good
probably
amount.
A few.
Yeah, probably a high percentage of a very low population. We'll see this. All right. Let's start. Where were you born? Were you born in Seattle?
No, you know this. I was born in Spain.
Yes.
It makes me very exotic.
Yeah. Well, I was born in Alaska, which is, even though
more exotic than Seattle.
Yeah.
Doesn't Trump speak?
Yeah. Well, no. Hey, let's not talk about Trump. There's no politics in this.
All right.
Okay, so you were born in Spain. What city?
Barcelona.
And where, if you were to take a Spanish fluency test, where would you go? Where would you hit?
Not an A, not a D, maybe a D. A D plus. A C minus. D.
Yeah.
C.
De. Okay.
I think C is a letter.
C. Yeah.
It's shitty. I say like most people who don't speak a language, I can understand a lot better than I can speak.
Right. But can you? Okay, actually that is important. If you're in a Spanish speaking country, how
if I spent in the last few years, I've spent chunks of time in Spain, and by the end I can order some food
and you understand them back.
Yeah.
Okay, well that's important.
And we'll be with family friends or whatever, and they're speaking Spanish, and I can pick up the gist of what's going on.
And how long have you been in LA this time around?
6 months.
6 months.
Got here right before Corona, a little before Corona.
Okay, and when did you move to Seattle? How old were you when you moved from Spain to Seattle?
All right, Spain till 3.5, then Seattle. Yeah.
Oh, so that's similar. I mean, I was 2.5 or 3 when I moved from Alaska to Seattle, so that's kind of similar.
Have you ever lived there again? I know you've gone.
I haven't lived there.
I've been.
We used to go every summer and every year, pretty much for a holiday. So I go just about every year.
Anchorage.
Yes. And I filmed something up there recently, and I got another project up there. So they're fun. Anyhow, so you moved to Seattle 3.5. That's when you blossomed into the Max we know today. Well, there were a few stages. So
there's been a few iterations.
When you came to, I guess I knew you in SHA 4th grade.
No, kindergarten. Kindergarten for me, first grade for you.
Oh, okay.
Wait.
No.
Yeah, I started at kindergarten at SHA.
But you weren't in my kindergarten.
Yeah.
Okay, so it was after I came back from Israel, maybe.
Oh yeah. What years did you leave? What years were you gone?
I was gone first grade in Israel, and then I came back for second grade. So
I probably knew you a little bit, second and third grade, and then fourth grade we were in the same class.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. I remember. Here's the Max that I remember because you and I. If there was someone sitting in the middle between the two of us, it would be Aaron Cohen,
100%.
Who maybe will also be in an episode on this. But shout out to Aaron Cohen. Check out his music. So Aaron was kind of in my growing up, kind of our mutual best friend, I would
100%.
say. And so that was, for me, I think the majority of our hangouts were centered, Aaron was the bridge. So the South Side to me was man, these kids are different. But no, mainly you had a high energy level from a young age. You were also very smart. Since this show is really about trauma and triumph, where do you have specific traumas, I guess, in your growing up ages that stick out to you, or just, I guess,
Yeah, I mean, I would say, there's two specific ones, and then there's like an overarching thing that kind of touches both of them. So I was fat for like a long time growing up, and that was definitely like traumatic for like
right.
a young
It's
boy
interesting because
in
now I've known
puberty.
you. It's been
It's
many
been-
years.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was like freshman year I like lost the weight or whatever.
You just lost it? It just happened?
No, and people used to say, "Oh, you slimmed out." Like, no, it took like a lot of work. It was really
Right, because
shitty. It
it's
was
hard to
really
do when you're young.
Yeah, and like I started biking to school every day from Seattle to Mercer Island, and was like super careful with what I ate, and like I literally lost the weight. And then people were like, "Oh, we always knew you'd slim out." It's like, no. This took
So
work.
what were you eating before? What were you eating after that really changed? Because
Like,
the 90s,
I was always
the
like-
90s was a great time for snacks,
Oh my
I think.
God.
Because
They
no
had
one
this
knew better.
M&M ice cream that came out that was really good. But I would like, I always fancied
M&M
myself
ice
like
cream.
going to be a great basketball player, but instead of like going to practice, I would like watch basketball and eat ice cream.
Snacktus.
Snacktus.
You'd have
Exactly. So that's kind of a theme too, like a disconnect with like reality. Like, oh, I'm gonna be like a basketball player, but I'm not like gonna practice.
So let's actually talk about you like opened up with it, which honestly wasn't even something not even something I thought about. 'Cause
Yeah.
we were so young then. So you just said being fat, like that was like an overarching trauma. So like, in what sense? Like, how did you feel? What was the,
I felt well, it was embarrassing, right? Like I didn't like the way I looked. I would get made fun of or whatever. But it also, I guess there was like a feeling of like helplessness. Like it wasn't something that like I knew it was my fault, so there was shame around it. But I also didn't know or feel like I had the power to overcome it until I did. And that was actually really cool. And I thought that would like give me, the juice to overcome other things. And it wasn't enough. But so that was like the first one, and that was smaller. And then obviously there was a bigger one that lasted longer.
did somebody like what was like the turning
So
point?
I think it's really interesting. Like, was there one thing that I don't know that I think it was like it tipped the scales or like the last, I don't know what you call it.
Good metaphor.
Yeah, exactly. But what's the thing where like you like pile on, like the
straw that broke the camel's back.
yes, that's the one I was looking for. Okay, so the straw, I remember exactly what it was. Can I say his name? Who gives a shit?
Okay.
He said it was like early. We were at school. We were at yeshiva, and he was like, "Oh, what bra size are you now?" And I don't know what, I like threw him. I mean, he was a senior, I was a freshman, and I remember that like outside the lunchroom area where that like payphone was, I like shoved him, and he was a skinny little kid. He like flew and like hit the payphone and like slithered to the ground, and I was really hurt. And that night,
I like you said I was really hurt.
I was. Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
I mean, he might have been. I don't care.
I know, but it's interesting how like
Several years later, my brother met his wife at his house. But anyways, so that night I remember going home and just like having had enough, and like it was a Friday because my mom made like Shabbat dinner. She made all these different things, and I didn't want to eat any of it. And she was like, and I remember even my family being like, "Yeah, you said you were going to lose the weight a bunch of times, and now like I made this beautiful food and you won't eat it." And I was like upset with them too because they like didn't believe in me. But it was true. Like I had tried a bunch of times, said I was going to lose the weight, but it never kind of stuck. And then I'll get real. I remember. Like I'd never like made a point to like exercise for the sake of exercising before. I didn't like even know what.
Right.
So like I went into
you'd shoot a few.
You shoot a few and consider
play
that.
Horse.
And I remember like taking off my shirt and going into the bathroom in the mirror and like running in place for like 2 hours until I was like so sweaty. And that was like my first exercise of like that. And I was probably like 13. And then and for whatever reason that time it stuck. Why it stuck that time and not other times, hard to know.
Maybe you were literally looking at yourself in the mirror.
Yeah, I mean, and that was part. And it was like a personal intensity moment that was like next level. But then like most things in terms of growth, like it's about consistency, and that's kind of what it was for me. And I went like OD with it. Like I dieted like perfect for because that's also been a theme for me. Is like
but where did you like? This is well, I guess we had internet, but not like.
I mean, it's kind of like I would eat as little as the healthy shit.
So you would just choose healthy stuff.
Yeah, but like I knew a little because like my mom's always been like in and out of Weight Watchers, like middle-aged Jewish ladies do, and so I kind of knew the shit a little bit. But it was pretty. I mean, instead of ice cream and cake and whatever, and like 4 sandwiches, it'd be like I'll have toast with a strawberry or some shit.
Even your tone changed with the food.
God, it was awful.
Yeah.
But what was interesting, I remember, is like I did it like perfectly. I never cheated because I always felt like if I cheated, then it was like, oh, fuck it. You know what I mean? I didn't have that ability to like do it in like a not healthy physically, but like a healthy brain state where like, oh, I'm going to eat healthier from now on 95% of the time and have some cheats and that's going to be okay. Like I felt like I had to be perfect. And I remember the first time I like said, fuck it. And like I had a slice of pizza. It was that NCSY thing like 9 months later. And then I ended up eating like 6 slices of pizza that night. So it was like I cheated, so whatever, it's all just fuck it.
Yeah.
And that ended up being like a thing I had to deal with in terms of like it's either all or nothing. Like it's also been like a theme to like get out of that.
Right.
Because that's like my natural mind state, I guess.
With that idea, because that seemed to be something that maybe you had from a really, really, really young age.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you like if you were to think about it, and not that it necessarily means that that's the reason, because some people I think are just wired certain ways, but because I have elements of that, but it manifests in different ways, sure. So it's like, and I'm just curious if you have any ideas to like why you think, is it like a competition? Was it like, I mean, we didn't talk about your family in terms of having an older brother and then, a much younger brother, but your sense of like, not even perfectionism, but like all-inism.
I think it has something, it's definitely related to the way I'm wired. I don't think, I mean, there are elements of competition for sure, but I don't think it's quite that. Somewhat more with myself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
I wouldn't think it's between you and your brother.
Yeah. It's like it's just like a deep intensity I have that like things don't feel worth it unless, competitive, unless I'm like the best or the most or the, there's a thing there. And so like if I'm not doing it all the way, like what's the point? And that's some hardwire shit, I think.
And with your businesses, like, because you have a few, you've got like very practical, I don't know if this was that, but,
we'll talk off camera.
Yeah. You got hashtag Sleepers in Seattle. And you have your own, right?
Yeah.
What's your?
So the furniture stuff. There's a couple. There's Sleepers in Seattle and there's Savvy Home.
And with Savvy Home, for instance, because that really is your baby, right? More or less.
Sort of.
But do you have like? Does that mindset? I mean, I know you're successful. Because and again, going back to what we were saying earlier, is like ironically, even in our class, which had tons of very academically gifted or just intelligent people, like. Not necessarily those were the people who went and you didn't even approach a very traditional approach at all, as we'll get to, but that mindset has definitely led to something.
It's been huge for it.
Yeah.
And in fact, like we'll maybe get into it more later, but like it's funny because like starting out at the furniture shit, the level of intensity was unhealthy, insane.
But that. Well, you were replacing something.
For sure. And so there was different elements of it. But I remember people, my closest people would be like, this is like unhealthy. Like the amount of time, the amount of intensity is like unhealthy. It's unhealthy. And it was. But those same people on some level, and it's not like a resentment thing, but it's just kind of a fact, are also very proud of what happened. You know what I mean? It's like, you did such amazing things. But like, but it was, and it kind of took that. So, I mean, there's a way to do it without, but yeah, I mean, that's definitely
I do think a lot of business people, especially creative people, whatever, they do end up putting the 20,000 hours in, and they somehow condense that into 10,000 hours. So they're really doing it twice as hard, twice as much all the time. So let's catch people up on the context. Okay, so you got to school, you start losing weight, you start definitely, I would say, growing into the persona of like, putting everything you got into what you're doing. So it's doing the dieting. That's helping, and then all of a sudden
it switched.
Well, something definitely.
It was either Purim or Simchat Torah. I don't remember which one. Set it off.
Where you went from, instead of one slice, from one shot to multiple shots, and then So there was like a one moment. The first, kind of.
Yeah. So like the first night I got drunk, it was literally, I don't even remember. It was either Purim or Simchat Torah.
So, one is like a holiday where Jews dress up in costumes and drink and have fun, and the other is one where they're dressed up in fancy clothes and dance with a tourist girl and drink and have fun.
Yeah. So and those are the 2 days in the Jew. I think that are like the most drinky party.
Yeah. They're very celebratory.
I think one of them was the first time I smoked weed, and the other one before was the one where I drank for the first time, like really drank, and I got drunk, and I got real sick.
How old were you?
So my timeline in terms of ages and years.
Do you remember what grade?
I think it was maybe freshman year, so it might have been Purim, so in the spring of freshman year.
Freshman year of
high school.
High school. Okay.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. It must have.
Is that early? Okay. Yeah.
Or sophomore.
Then it would have been towards the end of the year. Then it would. Yeah. It could. Yeah, you're right. It could have been towards the end of the year.
But I remember. I mean, I remember the day. Aaron Cohen was at my house. We were playing video games in the basement, and like it was like a half day, or it must have been Purim, because we were playing video games that day, and that wouldn't have been Squatra. And so, because it's a holiday, so we were playing video games. And he's like, "Yo, I think me and David, shout out David, are gonna drink tonight." I was like, "Oh, what do you mean?" Like it never crossed my mind. Like thinking back now, like a few weeks before, we had watched that movie. What's the Dave Chappelle stoner movie?
Oh, Half-Baked.
Whatever. And like I didn't even get it. I was like, oh, it's a funny movie. It didn't even like cross my mind. And it was like, yeah, we're gonna drink. I was like, huh? Oh, okay, I'm in. Yeah. And so like we got a bottle, whatever, from my dad's, like whatever. And when we got drunk, and I got real sick. And it was a horrible night. Blah blah blah.
Do you remember? You don't remember what you drank?
Oh, it was like some unmarked bottle from Peru that like wasn't kosher, but he couldn't bear to give it up. My dad
you were doing God's work.
Yeah, exactly. I was getting rid of that for my
flushing the tray out
father.
of the house. Yeah.
Flushing the tray. So I don't know. It was interesting because I don't want to take too long, but basically, like a few months before, my brother had gotten drunk for the first time, and he was like 3.5 years older than me, and he got like really sick, and he didn't really get in trouble. I was like amazed that my parents didn't put him in trouble, because like, and the thing was like he kind of learned his lesson, and literally for the next like few years he wouldn't even have like the sip of wine on Shabbat. He was so disgusted by alcohol because he got so sick, whatever.
Right.
So I got caught, whatever, that night, got real drunk, puked, whatever. I was really scared I was going to get in trouble, and my parents were like, "You learned your lesson, right?" Because I remember walking into the kitchen the next morning.
I think I remember that story, like when we were in high school.
And like my parents were like, "You learned your lesson, right?" I was like, "Yeah," and I knew in my head that like I couldn't wait to do it again, because the moment I had gotten drunk, the first moment I had gotten drunk the night before, like when I first felt it, I was like, "I'm drunk." It was the best moment of my life.
Really?
Yeah. Up until that point.
Really?
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
And the reason is this thing that I think played a part in the weight, played a part in a lot of things, was like this thing in my brain that like I don't know exactly what it is or how to describe it. It was like a general unease. Like there were things from when I was a little kid that I would remember always thinking about that. Like I'll give you an example. I remember being like 5 or 6, and I'm very close with my dad, like really close. I remember. I don't want to shout. Well, fuck it. I remember being up in the middle of the night and screaming for him. "Dad, come here, Dad, come here." We were like very close, and he would come. He's like, "What's wrong?" I was like, "I'm just thinking, like, you don't love me for me. You love me because I'm your kid. It has nothing to do with me." Because
sorry, how old were you?
Like young, like 5, 6.
Okay.
I mean, this would torture me for years.
Yeah.
I'll shout it now. I don't even care. So, like, when I would ask on a Saturday night to have a sleepover, my dad would be like, "Oh, who do you want?" And be like, Aaron or Solly or whatever. He'd be like, "That's fine." But if I said one name, he'd be like, "Can you ask somebody else?" He was just an obnoxious little kid. He's a nice guy. If I said Zev's gonna sleep over, he'd be like, "Can you ask another friend?" So he just wasn't a huge fan of Zev. Was like a little pest, whatever. And I remember saying in the middle of the night to my dad, like, "If I were Zev, you would love me. You don't even like Zev, but if he were your kid, you would love him. So it has nothing to do with me." And the shit would like torment me, and I couldn't sleep. You know what I mean? So like there was that's just an example, but there was like various shit that like made me uneasy, made me unhappy. That was always in my brain. And I think the first iteration of dealing with that was food, because like the moment when I'm tasting a piece of cake, I'm not thinking about something else. It was like an escape.
It's like hitting a dopamine trigger or whatever.
So that was my escape from these feelings and thoughts. But like, how much can you do that every moment? Can you do that well, I did a lot of moments. I ended up fat, and then that had its own thing. So I had to deal with that. So alcohol came in after I had like given up the food to that extent, whatever, and it worked better than food. I remember, and I never would have been able to describe this at this time. I just knew that, wow, I fucking loved that. I didn't know why. Now I know why. Those uneasy fuckers in my brain were gone.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think all kids do have deep questions. That's a very deep question, to have, and to like replace yourself when, other parents might have, or other kids might have been saying the same thing about asking you to sleep over, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
No, but that's what I'm saying is like, it's even to have that thought is pretty deep and also pretty, you know, and then for it not to then, I guess, be consumed by a more positive thought.
I think part of the problem was, thought was interesting.
But then you're conditioning yourself to use probably the wrong thing to replace happy, you know.
I think what might have been an issue with me was like the thought maybe, but it was more like I couldn't shake like the effect the thought had on me. Like it wasn't like, oh, I had this weird dark thought, like I'm gonna die or my dad's gonna die. Like that was one for sure.
Right.
Like I'm sure kids think of that, you know, and it fucks with them. But like then they like move on and play a video game. Mm-hmm. It would always be there. It would always be there. And so that's why when I got drunk for the first time, that went away. It was the best moment of my life.
And even when you would play a video game, I remember this. You would play a video game until that video game was done. Yeah. like there wasn't, you know, like you'd have to go through every door, and it's like, oh, Max bought a video game. You won't hear from him for 3 to 7 days, depending on how, you know, vast the world is.
Go in because it was like,
So, okay, so. Well, you discover alcohol, and she's the devil's juice for you.
Yeah.
And how, like, you know, I have my own outside memories, obviously, of like kind of seeing that happen. But there was like quite a lot of years where I think it went from, well, anytime alcohol is around, you're gonna hit it hard, to like anytime Max is around, there is alcohol. Maybe already in his system, or he's, you know. And what was like, I guess, how do you,
what was the progression
like? And again, if you have those like, well, this is when I sort of went, I went from this one to this one, you know, like.
So it was, I knew I wanted to do it as much as possible, but like as a 13 or 14-year-old or whatever, like,
so interesting,
the ability to get it or whatever wasn't that, you know, I couldn't just walk in,
right?
And I didn't know that, like, it seemed like a weekend. I was fucking young. I had done it one time, but like the next weekend we did it again, and the next weekend. So pretty immediate. It was an every weekend thing. Like, so it'd be like a thing to look forward to. And then again, here's where like the timeline gets hazy, but you know, then weed is in the picture. And then
again, with the perfectly laid metaphor, you went from tipping the scales with your weight to when it gets hazy with the weed. So you're just nailing it.
I'm nailing it.
Yeah.
Weed came into the picture, and then pretty quickly, you know, that was weekly, and then it was daily. I went to
wait. So how old at that point?
That was 15.
Okay.
That I kind of
so it's young.
Well, because I remember at 15, a friend like I was taken to my first meeting, like a 12-step meeting about it. So that was interesting. And I was like, this is not a fit. I'm nowhere near ready to be done with this. This is like all I got. This is my favorite thing in the world. So pretty quickly it was daily. Just because it was like the best. Like why wouldn't it be?
Right.
This is the best I feel. I want to feel good. Even.
And how are you at this point at 15? How are you as a human? You know what I mean? Like, how are you functioning as a brother, as a son, as a student?
Oh, it's getting worse. Because, you know, that first bottle, like, I stole from my dad. You know what I mean? But it would continue to get a lot worse. Like, at that, there was still a while where, like, just smoking weed and maybe drinking at night or on the weekends, like, I was still able to do really good in school. So, like, sophomore year of high school, like, my grades were, like, phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
And then what a major tipping point was I left the high school after sophomore year, and I did this running start program, which is basically college during high school. Whatever. Well, from my perspective, the way I sold it to my parents was like, I remember school, feeling that school was very inefficient. Like, if you count up all the seconds I'm actually hearing something new, it's probably like 47 seconds of my 9 hours am I actually learning something.
You know Tim Ferriss?
No.
Oh, you should check him out. He does like the 4-hour work week, the 4-hour body, and he just talks about basically really, you know, life hacking and getting very efficient with your time, like you do with your businesses. So you like maximize.
Yeah, it just like dawned on me that like I'm hearing a new formula in math class for 4 seconds. I get it, great. You know, I mean, it's just like there's seconds here that are valuable.
But you also got things very quickly.
Yeah, I mean that helped and probably played a part. So anyway, so like I sold them, you know, I could work. I could go to school for 3 hours because that's like a college schedule and write a book and start a thing or whatever. Obviously, that's not what happened. Obviously, what happened was like, and college, they don't take attendance. You just pass the test, you're good. And so I was fine with that. Like I could do that. And the rest of the time I could do whatever I wanted, which ended up being completely
that's
filled up with drugs and alcohol. So that like just like catapult. I think that sped it up so much that like just the free time I had because I was also a year younger. So I think I was 15 and I was going to school for like 2.5 hours a day. 3 50-minute
with
classes.
18-year-olds.
Yeah, and all starting at 18.
Yeah.
So there was 19, 20, 21, 22.
Right.
And so the accessibility and the free time to do it just skyrocketed. So, within a few months of that, I was not only daily, but like at that point, it was every waking moment. I was fucked up.
It's interesting because I now that you bring up Running Start, like I remember that time, and I remember like we were in regular high school. Max was like getting college credit and also like going off the rails.
Yeah.
Because it went from like you being in biology class and us doing this, the real childish crap, to then all of a sudden it was like, that is at least from when I remember there being a difference. Like I'd see you on Shabbat or whatever, we'd be hanging out, and it was like, oh,
there's a shift here.
Like it was different. And interestingly enough, when it was more, I'd say probably weed than alcohol, I was like, oh, Max is like kind of more chill. You know what I mean? Which is like maybe like a dangerous thing as friends also like to be aware of, is like, well, if he's not acting himself, but then I have one memory of being at and not to like, embarrass you. It was just like, this is when I saw something like, where we were at the Tice's, they had some backyard party.
I remember the stories of that day.
Right. And it was just like it was clear to me at that point, and I don't remember how old I want to say we might have still been in high school
we
age.
were. I know how old I was.
Yeah.
Because
were 17
there was
maybe?
a girl there that I'd messed around with.
Yeah.
And I was 15.
15. Right. So
with the
like
trolley.
Yeah. No, it was like they had like a whole carnival, and we were a bunch of like young teenage kids who were allowed to crash the party because it was for kind of the area and the block. And it was like,
I remember what I did.
Oh, I mean, yeah, that's interesting that you like just can't.
Yeah, I totally forgot about that.
Yeah.
I broke into the house
and took
like some stuff, including a bunch of alcohol.
Yeah.
Like I remember I was just like rifling through their house, like, and they're like super, like it was like we didn't like know them like that. They were like the rich family,
right?
The super like a movie 10 Things I Hate About You was like filmed on their lawn.
Yeah.
Like, ooh.
No, there was.
Did I just incriminate? What's the statute of limitations on robbery?
I would say that either way you can make restitution now if they check it out.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, what I remember is you were falling over things. Being, and I was like, oh, okay, no, this is not the best, and this is like in the day, you know,
Saturday morning.
Yeah, it's not like, oh, we went to this one-off party where everybody's drinking. It was like, so okay, so from there
was this thing where like the goal of life had become
getting
fucked up.
Yeah,
because again, like, and it wasn't like. It just made sense to me because that is when I don't feel pain. So pretty quickly, and I think this is kind of what was maybe interesting or part of the way in which it sped up. It was like it went from being fun. Like the first many times, I drank or whatever, it was fun. There was that release of the pain, but it was fun. And not that long. So I think, maybe an old person, like compressed in time, like it went from fun to anesthesia. It was like pretty quickly. It was like the only time I didn't feel pain, and the pain was increasing too. Because in addition to all the shit I had when I was a kid, whatever in my brain, now there's shame's racking up.
Yeah, well, so you start to kind of be aware of you being
disaster.
Yeah,
disaster.
Okay.
Yeah, and so now I wake up in the morning. Not only do I have the other shit, it's like, oh, and I'm a piece of shit. And I've turned into a piece of shit.
And then you just want to
drown that. So now I really have to not feel.
So now you have to drown that out.
Exactly.
Along
with
like the regular, like, yeah, life is hard and I feel that difficulty intensely because I'm a thinker and I'm I'm like an intense person.
The need for it skyrocketed.
Right, yeah. Well, okay, because then you go to UW.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know if we might have overlapped like a year.
I was only in UW for a few months.
Okay, so then no, we didn't. And then, like, I think that's kind of when I don't know really what it was like then it was like I didn't really see you until after the time I remember like seeing you for the first time in a long time was after you had gotten out and we were at Ellie Klatanek Shavabrachot.
Vaguely. Was I okay then?
I was
very, very skinny.
You were skinny, you were shaky, you were trying to make some peace in your life.
Okay. I think I know when that must have been.
Yeah, so but let's talk about how you got from
UW to there.
Yeah.
So like the first couple of years, like when I was doing the college shit running start, I was able to like maintain like 4.0.
Yeah.
Even though I was
oh man, sorry. I just laughed thinking about your SAT story.
Oh, which you were next to me.
Yeah, which maybe we should sidebar for a second.
Sidebar?
Yeah, I think we sorry. This is a Traumatically Triumphant sidebar. We just invented it. Yeah, so okay. It's senior year of high school, so that's like 2005, something. Yeah, 2005. And we are 4 of us are going to take the SAT test. Aaron among us, and what I remember is you were definitely really good and high for early morning SAT experience, and then. I have this memory. We parked in the parking lot, and you tried to like hoist yourself out of the car, kind of like head first. You were kind of just acting a fool, and this is when weed still had somewhat of an effect, I think. And it was like you pulled yourself out, and you kind of like fell on the ground. You're like, oh, I guess that was a bad idea. And then
I don't remember that at all.
No, I didn't think you would. And it's so random that I don't know why I would think that. And then I remember we go into the test place, and right off the bat, you do not make friends with the lady who
administering the test. Yeah. No. Well, I think I remember I had a joint in my ear.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you had it in your ear or your pocket or whatever it was, but you had one for sure. Yeah. Because that was the joint that broke the administrator's back.
Was it?
Well,
no. Okay. The way I remember it was, I finished. Do you remember this?
Well, I'm gonna. Yeah, you tell. No. Tell your version because I want to see.
No, I mean, I don't remember much. I remember there was a joint like in my ear, and I was like playing with it, and we're taking the test, and I like finished kind of early, and there's some time, and she's like kind of being a bitch for no reason, and let's cheat out here. No one cares.
No reason.
No, whatever. So I'm like cracking jokes. I'm like talking about her, making some little jokes, but I like my book is closed ahead of me. Like I'm done with the test, and I think I like cracked a joke about her to you. And she says, "That's it." And she walked up and she tore my test up. She tore my fucking SAT up. And I was heated because I had like not gone out the night before for this big deal.
Yeah, you just gone up the day up.
Yeah, but I hadn't gone out the night before, so I thought I was going to do pretty well. And
you would have.
I think so. Yeah. And so I was really upset because that was my SAT.
So I remember pretty much the same. I don't remember it. What I remember is the very end point. I remember like in between, from the very introduction of the two of you, it was already like, oh, he's the kid, and she was like the type of woman who like probably always has a little bit of a beef with someone. And we were also like a small group of Jewish kids on a Sunday because we didn't take it on Saturday. Yeah. And you were sort of pegged from the beginning, and then
I'm the victim, honestly.
Yeah. Oh yeah. and then every other section just about you, because I was sitting behind you, and we had the twirly chairs, and you would like, you would like turn around to chat with me, which means you were technically in the wrong from a teacher's perspective, and then you had been warned a few times, and then on the last one you had finished. She kept thinking I was cheating, but I was. No, and we were like, no, we're not, like, and I was like, Matt, just turn around, and you're like, you didn't care.
I just couldn't.
Yeah, and then
bring myself.
Yeah, and then you turn around on this last one, and because I remember it was almost like a Ace Ventura style. You were like, I'm gonna smoke this joint after this test. I'm gonna smoke this joint after this test. Like as you were facing me, but then not. She wasn't hearing it. She just knew that you were saying something to me, and then she came in, and that was the end. And then so. But then to me, what made that story even funnier was years later, and we'll finish the sidebar in a moment. Years later, you were at a much better place in this part of life. you, Aaron, maybe Dave and I, or Ruby. We were at some like random cafe in Belltown, and we were just, it was like late at night, and we were like telling stories, and it was like a random time for us to all be together. And you told me that sometime later you received SAT scores in the mail, having like no recollection of taking the test.
Yeah, so what happened was, so that day I had like prepared, and relatively prepared, and she'd torn up my test. Another, a few months later or whatever, I'm on a boat. I have no idea. I vaguely recall a boat, and getting a call from my mother and be like, "Where are you?" And some of the story was more filled in later by my mom, and she was like, "Where are you?" And I was like, I don't, what? Like, what's going on? She's like, "I just went into your room to wake you up. You have to go take the SATs today." And I was like, fuck. I'd been up all night, like partying all night. I guess I went and I took the test, but I was like,
but you didn't even
drunk.
But you didn't even remember.
I have no recollection of that.
Do you remember? Do you remember what you got? You got into UW.
Yeah, I mean, I it was like honestly don't. It was under 15, above 1450. So I did pretty good.
Yeah.
But I remember, because I was still am to a large degree. I'm a snobby asshole.
Yeah.
I always thought I was smarter than everybody.
Right.
And so I expected a 1600, which is a completely asshole thing to say and think, but I'm being like, that is what I expected.
Well, I would expect you to remember taking the test. If you're gonna
we have different opinions on stuff. No, but I just remember especially as I was younger, and knew what certain people knew what my older brother had gotten, knew what Danny Fast, I think, got a 16. So I knew what I wanted. Right. I remember as a kid, being like, I'm going to get that and I'm going to do this. And then that is the tip of the iceberg of things that went out the window, with drugs and alcohol.
Right. Okay. So, all right. So now, so you're pretty deep. It's so far weed and alcohol.
So UW starts. Yeah. And again, I'd been able to maintain everything, but then harder drugs hit, as I'm starting UW. And so, I'm a pretty smart guy. I don't have to work too hard to do well in school. My first quarter semester, I don't even know what they do there anymore. I don't remember, but I didn't go. I didn't go very much. I didn't go. I didn't turn in one thing. Yeah. I didn't take one test. My GPA was a 0.0, and I was shocked. And that's kind of, again, a disconnect with reality. I remember getting my grades. I was like, oh, yeah, I didn't work too hard this quarter. It was 0.0. It wasn't like it was 0.0. I just didn't go. I didn't show up. And so I was like, So I remember I did a responsible thing, and I went and I spoke to them. I was like, I don't think I'm ready to do this right now. Can I leave and come back? They're like, yes, once a UW student for life. You can go whenever you're ready. Come back. And they weren't too pleased with me anyways. So I left. And then pretty much just did and sold drugs all day for a bit.
And so pot, or then it graduated?
Pot was always in the mix. Alcohol was fully in the mix all day, every day. And then cocaine was in the mix all day, every day as well.
Okay. Yeah, because at that point, we were not seeing it, or I wasn't aware.
Did you go to Israel after high school for a year? Yeah, so you guys were in Israel. Okay. That was the year that all that, that was when it went from bad to horrific.
Okay. And also, and a lot of your friends were, your friends growing up who probably they
all went to Israel.
Yeah, you might have held yourself to a slightly different standard. Bit.
Actually, also probably a responsible decision. All my friends were going on the same program, and it's a thing we do from our school. Everyone does this, and in that year in particular, I don't know if you did. Did you go to this year?
I didn't go. No, I didn't.
Okay, but almost everybody went to year course. Much more concentrated. In most years, it's more spread out. Mm-hmm. More all my besties were going to year course, and
we hung out. I saw, except for Ruby was all around, but I'd see everyone except for Yishai, who was Hollywooding us. But yeah.
So I remember hearing that if you get caught smoking weed on this thing, they won't refund you and they'll kick you out. And I just knew that would be so horrible. And so I didn't go for that reason. Not that I didn't want to. I just knew I wouldn't. There wasn't even maybe I'll try and not smoke weed for a few months. Day one, I would be as high as I could. Right. So I just didn't go. So all my besties from my whole life were gone. And and cocaine came in the picture and shit went.
How did cocaine just appear?
A mutual friend of ours.
Okay, yeah, you don't need to.
I'm not going to say her name, but you know who it is, probably, if you think about it for a second. had gone off to college, seen it, whatever, brought it back, and within.
If you like alcohol that much and you like weed that much.
This is how crazy it was, and this is like one of the things that tells me I know what I am, like in that respect. My family was going to Hawaii. I did it for the first time. I did cocaine for the first time on December 18th, my birthday. I know that. Our family went to Hawaii for Christmas, and we left December 20th. I did it for the first time December 18th. I did it December 19th. I couldn't bear the thought of going on a week without it. And I lined my thighs with cocaine for the trip to Hawaii. Yeah, I'd done it for the first time less than 48 hours before, and I was already like, oh, I can't live without this. And I went and bought a bunch and like lined my thighs with it for the plane to Hawaii. Like.
And you made it through?
Well, that's a whole story. It's really actually pretty funny, but.
Well, let's.
No, so. But that's insane. That I was like, so much of a daily user.
Well, how much did you spend on that?
I mean, like a good amount.
And how much? Like a couple thousand?
No, I mean several hundred, maybe 500, 600 for one person for a week.
And how are you? How are you making were your parents? I mean, I guess you were young enough that maybe your parents were giving you some cash.
There was some cash from that. There was some cash from sales.
Right. Oh yeah, you're selling.
Yeah, I was selling, but I was also doing some like not cool, like I was stealing. I was doing all kinds of whatever. Nothing mattered as much as getting high. Period. Because like that's the only way I don't feel horrible. It was just like. It didn't even feel so much like a decision as like a matter of fact that I had to do it.
That's interesting.
I mean, it's my responsibility. I mean, it's not like I had to do it. That's how it felt in those times. It didn't feel like a decision.
No, I mean, well, it's interesting because like I remember the first time I drank. I remember the first time I got sick drinking. I didn't have that feeling that you had.
Yeah.
I was like, in fact, you probably remember most of the time I would be at these parties. Most of the time I wouldn't drink. And I smoked for the first time with Aaron because we were talking about Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. And he's like, and I was always a film dude. So he's like, you won't understand this movie
if you don't try
if you don't like try any sort of drug ever. And I was like, I was like, well, I'll do it privately, like just you and I. Like I didn't want to do it because my friends were doing it. That was not my interest. So, okay, so... Yeah, I mean, as Rick James would say, cocaine's a hell of a drug. But but it makes sense. Like it really is you keep moving up into like the literal dopamine centers that you're hitting, and that is obviously something that you were craving. So wait, so did you make it through is that where everything happened?
No, nothing. I mean, so I was in line at
SeaTac. They have extra security to go to Hawaii sometimes.
So I was at SeaTac. And the line was super long. I got bored. I was like, I'm gonna go to the bathroom for a little bit and I was gonna like do some, like leave the security line to go do a little and come back to the security line, like because my parents were gonna go along the line. I was going with my family, so I did that, and then I guess I got freaked out or whatever, and like I just stuffed it all in my pocket, and then like I'm back in security. I put my hands up, and I realized that I hadn't even closed the bags. Like not only so before I taped them to my inner thigh under my underwear. Not only had I not done that, I left them in my pocket and like bags were open. So I just had like my jean pockets were just lined with it. And I was like, fuck. And so the whole time on the airplane, I'm just like sitting next to my dad. Like it was awful.
Would you describe yourself as clumsy before all the
clumsy,
cloudy stuff?
Clumsy for sure.
Meaning when you were young?
Oh,
I think I kind of remember.
Still clumsy.
Yeah, like you were.
Yeah, it was just
also
messy,
you
clumsy.
were bigger, so I remember playing sports, but I think there was also an element of just.
I just saw a picture from Little League before all the drug shit, where like everyone has like their white pants and their tucked in shirt. I think I showed Connor something, and I'm just looking complete. There's like picture day, Jose Photo.
Yeah, I remember.
Jose Photo. I'm just a complete fucking mess. Yeah, I mean I'm a clumsy, messy guy.
Right.
By nature.
I mean that's
So that didn't help.
Right.
So anyway, but no, that's not when shit hit the fan. Shit hit the fan when. Well, potentially better, I guess. But I mean, and that's how it went. So at that point, that was like December. So I think very soon after that, that was probably the end of the quarter. So I think that was like the end of my schooling, kind of ever. I no longer did school for the next like 8 to 10 months. I think maybe 10 months. I was just doing and selling drugs all day. But I'm 16.
Yeah.
Maybe 17.
Well, at least you knew your career early.
And so that had become my whole life. And I wasn't living with my family anymore. I had like my own apartment, which is crazy too. and it was in the frat area of UW, so I could have the customers, whatever. And then I had an intervention. I had like a drug intervention for my family and some other loved ones.
I think I remember that, or I remember that discussion.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll try and speed up till we get to the good stuff. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, not the good stuff. Like,
well, no, like when I got better. This was
I think we're just missing one because we're missing one component because that's I think what makes your story. You hit what I would call the bottom.
Yeah.
So it was after the intervention, but then you end up.
Oh, that was not. It was to not be my bottom. The bottom got way worse.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So let's get us to the bottom, so then we could get to the.
Yeah.
So then we can get to the top.
Okay. So the next few years. Okay. So I got to rehab. I ended up getting a few months sober, and then I relapsed, and then that would happen several more times.
Any particular like cautionary tale for those who, you know what I mean? Like you relapsed after a few months, like why then? Or where was your mind?
So for me, there's a reason why I drank in the first place.
Right.
Like with addiction and stuff, there's the actual like physical or whatever to the thing, and then there's also like the reason why you were I don't know how to put it, but like whether it's susceptibility or whatever, the reason why you became that in the first place, addicted to that in the first place, is something inside of you. Before, like there was a reason why the first night I drank, it was the best night of my life. That is what I would ultimately have to deal with in order to be okay. Otherwise, you're just holding on. Kind of like with the first diet, where it was like, once I had a slice of pizza, I was off. It was like, I had to find like another way to live. And so this is obviously a bigger deal for me. Like, there was a reason why alcohol was the best thing in the world. And so, not doing it for a while, I got away from it, but like, I still needed it because I hadn't dealt with the need. And so, it was like 6 months later, I had moved to New York. And I was like, I can have one beer. I haven't had anything in 6 months. So I had a beer, and within an hour, there's a mound of cocaine, there's a mound of weed, and there's like cases of alcohol. So, and that would happen a few more times. Still wasn't to be the bottom. Pretty quickly, I was homeless. At this point, I'm a little bit older, and I'm not in Seattle anymore, so I don't have any type of safety net. I was in New York City, and crack came into the picture, crack cocaine, and so that was like coke, but even the next step, it was that much farther, that much harder, that much more money, that much quicker. And so, and I'm homeless now, like on the streets. I thought that would be my bottom. And there were some very dark moments.
How long were you homeless?
I mean, off and on for maybe 6 to 8 months in New York. But like I would get into some like free detox, but that detox was like, I remember it was bad. Because which are free rehabs in Harlem or the South Bronx, like it's not nice living, whatever. And so I would have a roof over my head sometimes. Still, I'd never done much time locked up. And long story short, I guess they shipped me to a special rehab if you're like real fucked up in Arizona. And I get there and I leave day of. At that point, I already had like 30 days sober. It's not that I didn't want to be sober, and that was maybe the cautionary tale. Is like, the first several times I stopped using, I thought I was done forever. Like it was so much, like on paper, like pretty quickly I could get like a job, a car, a girl, so it was like my life would be pretty good on paper pretty quickly. I'd be like, this is way better than the way I was living, legitimately. But like, because of that, I didn't like do any of the deeper work, so that when shit kind of hit the fan, I had like no defense to like take care of myself. Right. So anyway, like when I got shipped to Arizona, I had been in rehab for like 30 days or whatever. So I was like clean, like I wanted that life. I got to this Arizona place, and it's hard to describe, but it was like in the mountains of Arizona. It was like a really dark and shitty place. It was just, nobody meant for me to go to a dark and shitty place. That's just kind of how it worked out.
Right.
And like, cause my parents had ended up like trying to help again. It was really bad. And so I left the day of, just like on the streets in Arizona, thinking, what the fuck am I going to do? And I relapsed that night. And so pretty quickly I'm on the streets there and I get arrested. I end up doing a decent amount of time. And that was, even though I wasn't done, I wouldn't get sober from this, that was probably the worst the bottom ever got. This was like northern Arizona. There's no black people. It was like 65% white, 35% Mexican, and all the white people locked up were Aryan. Brotherhood, not like whatever.
Right, yeah.
And so I get there and there's swastikas everywhere. My guard, my CO at the prison had a swastika. It was really dark. And, I was in Arizona and I pretty much pissed away everybody. So I wasn't talking to, the only person that was really talking to me at that point in my life was my dad. had no visitors, had nothing, and like it was, and I'm sober, like physically sober because I'm locked up. So I get to play with my thoughts, and so if they were dark when I was 13, the first time I ever drank, imagine now, like I was like a nice Jewish boy with all this potential, and now I'm like by myself, locked up in Arizona, surrounded by swastikas, with like no hope. That was.
I mean, luckily, I mean, it's not like anyone's going to know you're a Jew necessarily.
Oh, they did.
How?
I fucked up. So my first night, this is kind of funny story, I guess, now. My first night, I like didn't know what to do. So I get there and like, there's clearly whites with the whites, Mexicans with the Mexicans. And like I get my tray of food and like you're supposed to sit with one. But I was like darker than most of the white people. Yeah. So I'm just standing there. I don't know what to do. I'm not going to sit with the guys with swastikas, obviously. I mean, I can't, there's just, you know. But like the Mexicans are, back to my like understanding of Spanish, not high enough. But also it's like super hood Spanish, really like I couldn't, so I'm not Mexican. I don't speak like that. So I couldn't like converse. So I'm just standing there with my tray, like terrified.
That's a very
it was a bad
crazy moment.
Yeah. So the head Mexican guy walks up to me. He was clearly like the head dude, you know, he's the biggest, the strongest. Everyone was like, whatever. His name was Magic and had Magic tattooed across his forehead. Oh. And he was like, so, you know, we see you kind of in between or something. We're going to let you choose. We're going to do you a favor. You can choose. You want to be with the whites or with the Mexicans? I was like, oh, you know, I don't know. He was like, take a walk with me. Whites or Mexicans? I was like, nah, you know, I don't know. He was like, no, you're going to choose white or Mexican. And by golly, what came out of my mouth was, neither, I'm Jewish. And he put his arm around me and was like, oh, neither of us like you. And that was like my first night. And so, it was really bad. It was really dumb. But I also had no idea, like, I hadn't been arraigned yet.
But did that lead to you getting the shit kicked out of you because of that? Or were that, I mean, it seems
it led to bad stuff, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, okay, interesting. I mean, it's so as if like anti-Semitism should matter in a prison, you know?
No,
it's
it's
so
funny
crazy.
because like having lived in Seattle and New York, you don't really see like live, you know what I mean?
Right.
It was weird.
Yeah.
I mean, it was also awful, but it was also like, what? Like, are you serious? Like, is this a joke? Yeah. My God, like I just like, you know, it exists, but like growing up in Seattle as like a Jewish kid, you like kind of know it exists, but it doesn't seem like a real thing that happens today. And I was like, oh my God, this is bad. And you know, but even aside from that, like, so it was a really dark place. But it was more than that. It was like, I knew that it was like my actions that got me there. It wasn't like I could blame, like, you know, that. So there was like a martyr, or so like, oh, that there was no righteousness, there was no indignation. There was just like, I fucked up.
Yeah.
And so that was really, really dark. And I was there for a while. And then by the time I got out, I was supposed to, like, part of my conditions of release were that I would not, you know, drink alcohol or use drugs or whatever. But I had no hope that I could not do it. And so I did immediately. And so over the next, like, year, real quick, basically what they would do is they'd give you a violation. So, like, I got sentenced to, like, 7 years, but I got out, like, 4.5 years early. But it's a suspended sentence. So basically, you know, if you fuck up the conditions of your release, they'll give you the rest of the 7 years. Maybe.
Yeah.
So, like, I would drink, and that'd be a violation. So they'd lock me up and be like, are we going to give you another chance or not? And they always did.
Yeah.
And apparently they always kind of do. But
if you're not like a violent offender.
Yeah, they're always going to let you out because it costs them, whatever.
Yeah.
So, so over the next, like, year, about 5, 6, 7 times that happened. And then for some reason, the last time, some different stuff happened, and like it was the first time I had ever made the call. Because the first several times I tried to stop, somebody like stopped me, and I was like, yeah, I fuck with this, I want to try and do that, and then I wasn't able to. The last several, someone stopped me, whether it was the first one would have been an intervention, then after that it was like judges or rehabs or detail, whatever. I would be stopped to give me a chance. But I had no hope that I could do it. I didn't believe that I was capable of stopping and getting better. For whatever reason, the very last time, which lasts till today, one of the differences was I made a call. So I got out the last time. I immediately violated by drinking and smoking or whatever. And then I made a call. I was like, can you help me stop? And that was the first time that had ever happened.
Who would you call?
My father.
Okay.
Yeah. It was funny. I was like, yeah, I'll pick you up right now. I was like, oh, tomorrow at midnight. And that's when you know, wow. And I took my last sip at like that next day at like 11:59 or whatever.
Right. So then, and this is sort of where I guess my observations come back into the picture, because I saw you at some point after. I don't know how long after.
I think when you saw me at that one time, it would have been during that year that I was like trying and not fucking up.
Yeah, you were definitely like on edge, but you definitely had your like sights were very like intentional, but you were not. You hadn't. I mean, which makes sense. I mean,
or it could have been after the final time where it did get okay.
Yeah,
and it was at the beginning. I don't know.
But then I remember not seeing you then for a while, and then I saw you in Israel.
Yeah,
and that was like, oh, there is light at the end of this tunnel. And actually, since then, it's been very light. And that was years ago. And that was probably 8 years ago. And
because at that point I've been like sober for like 10 and a half years, almost
right
11.
And I remember you saying, like, I remember we were like eating at some cafe or something, and you were saying like, I just like one line, you're like, yeah, I'm just like being a better brother and son and person. I was like, oh, whoa. And you were just like clear, you were clear and you were happy, like you felt. And I think you were maybe hanging out with Fa or something at the time, or and so his brother, and it was it was cool. So I guess now that we're at this stage, kind of wrapping up, how did you go? Okay, so you made the call. So that's one important thing to note is like you made the choice. You had made choices before, but maybe that hadn't gotten you to the root of why you were even going there, or not completely down to the root of it. And then you make the call, but there was still more work. I mean,
so I think a couple of things. I think part of the difference that time was that I decided I would rather be, and this was a big deal for me, that I would rather be happy than right. I always thought like I had to figure out something, and there was a difference that time where it was like I think if I just kind of like follow some suggestions that have been offered to me, which is really hard for someone like me to do, because like, no, I could figure this out better, or that doesn't make sense because of this, and I would try and go my own route. So I think that was a big part of it, that I was so broken enough that I was like willing to try something that sounded not my style. I think that what was I gonna say? Oh man, I just went blank. I had a thing. Pause for a second. We'll cut the.
Okay.
Oh my god.
You want to roll it back? Eric.
Oh, he's here.
Yeah, I think he's upstairs.
Okay,
okay.
Man,
that's okay. We got a few minutes.
Was it? Oh, I had the fucking. That's wild. My head just went blank. Oh yeah, I got it. I think the other thing is like, I mean, it's a bummer, but pain is a great motivator. It was for me. It was the greatest motivator. It's unfortunate, but right. Like the thing is, I was in so much pain that I was like willing to do what it took. I don't think I would have done it if it weren't. It wasn't like to my merit of like, oh, I want to be such a good guy, I'll do it differently now. It was like, no, like I'd run out of other options, and I was in so much pain that it was like, I'll try whatever. And so I did some things, and like, I don't know the real rules, but I was in a 12-step program, and what was interesting was like that was the source of the work I did. So basically, the first step in the 12 is like talks about the thing you've been doing, but then the next 11 are like other things that you do to kind of deal with, to me, the shit that like made me susceptible or whatever you want to call it in the first place. So it was like, look at your shit, deal with your shit, clean out the shit, you know what I mean? And then like live in a better way, and like when you make new mistakes, clean those up quickly, and take
and
consistent inventory. Exactly. So like a huge component of fixing it was like making amends to specific people. I mean, all of the people I like had on my list or whatever, but they were like some major ones, like my parents, my older brother, Aaron. You know what I mean? This was like cleaning out, because like if I were like this susceptible, the first time I drank and it was so great, like I had gone to here where I needed it. And so like dealing with that shit and cleaning that shit out of my brain, body, soul, whatever you want to call it, like helped a lot. And then this was a combination of that and like a support network, and just being like willing to do things that I had never been willing to do before. And the reason why was pain. Because like I'm not the first guy to ever like get to that place and come out of it. And so it wasn't like I had to figure it out. there are ways to do it. People have done it. It was like, are you willing? And for the longest time, I hadn't been willing to do it not my way. But once the pain was great enough, and the question is, and this is why people say, like, bottoms can be different for different people. It's like when I had had enough.
Yeah.
And to be willing. So.
And I think, right. So to me, I mean, like, one maybe more universal takeaway there is, like, pain is a good motivator, but maybe our first way of channeling it, and second and third and fourth, may not be the best way. And to, like, consider, all right, well, the pain is pushing me in a direction.
Mm-hmm.
Let me be really conscious of every time I'm making this decision that feels like it's being born out of something. Like, is it pushing me in the direction I ultimately need to go? And obviously, you started going down in this road pretty young, so it's like, it's hard to consider all that. But again, hopefully, and I know you live by this, is like, you went through your own stuff, like you went through and you thought about it. That's an interesting observation. The pain is the motivation. But then to me, what I see from what you're saying is, okay, well, great. You also,
now what?
Yeah, now what? And is it gonna lead you down the same path ultimately, or just a different path that's the same, or are you gonna really, like, get to the bottom of it? So,
quick things. So, like, I think for me, and the idea to make sure I was, like, doing the right things to get out of the pain was, like, a network, whether that's people you love, people in a similar situation, family, best friends, whatever. Like, that was what I did best. Of all the, like, suggestions out there, like, the thing I did best was, like, I had a really dope network. And so, because you're coming from a pained brain, for me, that was, like, making bad decisions, I couldn't really trust my decisions. But I had people kind of guiding me, and people that I trusted and loved and I knew loved me. So that was a huge component. And then just real quick, in terms of, like, it being my story and my pain, I wouldn't trade it for anything, which is really hard to say. Like, the one thing I can't say that about is, like, the pain I gave other people. But, like, it got me to a place that I don't think I ever would have been to if it weren't for this. So, like, I can't just, like, I wish that on anybody. But as hard as it was, and it was hard and it was painful and it was dark, it, like, I'm so grateful for it, because my level of gratitude, my level of empathy, my level of love has way more potential, I believe, than if I hadn't gone through that for me.
Right. No, I mean, and that's kind of that's part of, like, and that's part of the thesis of my show is, like, I think a trauma is sort of like when you push all the weight you can that you didn't even know you could push, let's say, in an actual weight push, right? If you tear just enough muscle to rebuild it, it's stronger than it was before. And I think these events, and you're saying you wouldn't trade it, to me, that's a sign of true acceptance. Like, this is the reality. I could live in regret. I could live in hate. I could live in, shame the rest of my life. Or I could say, these are the actions I took. These are the lessons I've learned. Now I know how to avoid these situations and also how to help other people.
That's huge.
As we go, and that's Traumatically Triumphant with Max, social distance bump, Alcabez.
Right.
Thank you for tuning in with us at Pink Cloud Studios. Whether you're a pop star or a podcast host, this is the place to get you up and running. We'll be back with another episode soon. Tune in, subscribe, all that good stuff. Peace.